there, I'm Dr. B, and welcome to my training, Something's Up with My Kid. This is the module on loneliness. Some people like to take notes as we're going through the modules, so if that's you, I encourage you to press pause and go print out the handouts for this module. This module is going to flow just like the other ones do. First, I'm going to go over the psychological problem or the risk that we're seeing. Then I'll go over the reasons that we're seeing this, and then we'll talk about what we can do about it. Okay? So with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so first let's review a bit of evidence about this widespread problem of loneliness. I'm not going to drown you in research statistics, and actually a lot of the information in this part of the module comes from the book iGen by Jean Twenge. If you're not familiar with this book, I highly recommend it. It's a great resource for understanding the characteristics and the trends that we're seeing in the iGeneration. So I'm going to share some basic data so we have a good context of the problem of loneliness, and then we'll go on to the reasons why it's a problem and what we can do about it. Okay, so why does loneliness matter, right? Like, why am I talking about this? Well, loneliness matters because we're social creatures who evolved to be with others. When a person spends a lot of time alone and by themselves, they miss out on the positive reinforcement that they can experience when being with others. Whether it be just a smile from a friend or even a smile from a stranger walking down the street. When you spend a lot of time alone, there's a tendency to think a lot about your own problems and your own struggles, versus if you were with someone else, you could have the opportunity to talk about what's on your mind, receive support from that other person, or even have a moment of considering what the other person is going through versus this constant focus on self. So loneliness matters because over time it can lead to depression. And a lack of support is a key factor in people struggling with depression. So the more lonely someone feels, the more their mental health suffers. So survey responses reveal that teen loneliness is the highest that it's been in 3 decades. 31% more 8th and 10th graders felt lonely in 2015 than in 2011, and 22% more 12th graders felt lonely in 2015 than in 2011. Teens are lonelier now than at any time since the survey started in 1991. So we increase screen time and we also increase loneliness, right? When teens as a group spend more time on screens and less time on in-person social interactions, their loneliness increases on average. So in the past 10 years, smartphones have become popular, screen time has increased, and thus teen loneliness has increased as well. Screen activities are actually linked to more loneliness, and non-screen activities are linked to less loneliness. So teens who spend a lot of time with their friends in person are much less likely to feel lonely, with their risk being cut nearly in half. And the more that a teen visits social media or social networking sites daily or even nearly daily, they're 11% more likely to feel lonely. So it's not, it is the non-screen activities that help teens to feel less lonely, not social media. The loneliest teens actually are those who spend a lot of time on social media and less time with their friends in person. So now that we have a little bit of a context about the problem, let's explore the reasons that we're seeing this problem in our kids. Okay, so now let's move on to the reasons that loneliness is a problem. I'm going to review the following 5 reasons for increased loneliness. 1 being the timing of the increased loneliness and the introduction of the smartphone. 2 being loneliness levels, boys compared to girls. 3 being our evolution. 4 being online versus in-person interactions. And 5 being isolation. So the first thing, that we need to consider here is that we can't ignore the timing, right? Such large changes in a short period of time is unusual, suggesting a specific cause. And, given the timing and how smartphones have come on the scene, within the past 13 years, and us seeing this increase in loneliness, we can't ignore that's the way that we interact with smartphones and how, certain interactions are replacing in-person interactions, how that's influencing our loneliness and the loneliness of our kids. So feeling left out appears for both boys and girls. However, it's more pronounced for girls. 48% more girls felt left out in 2015 than in 2010, and 27% more boys felt left out in 2015 than in 2010. Girls have a tendency to use social media more, which gives them more opportunity to feel left out and lonely when they see people getting together without them. So seeing friends out when they're not invited could lead teens to feel as if they're alone or they can't truly count on those that they thought were their friends. And social media is the perfect medium for the verbal aggression that girls favor. Boys tend to bully more physically, whereas girls seem to bully more verbally. So again, social media gives middle and high school girls, this 24/7 platform to carry out this social aggression that they prefer, ostracizing and excluding other girls, and actually girls are twice as likely to experience cyberbullying than boys. The third thing I'm going to talk about is our evolution, right? So in-person social interaction is much better for our mental health than electronic communication. As humans, we are inherently social beings and we crave face-to-face interaction. We're astutely attuned to social acceptance and rejection, right? In a study that Jean Twenge conducted when she was on her postdoctoral fellowship, it was found that even a brief, randomly assigned experience of being socially rejected led the participant to have an increase in their aggression, increase in feelings of hopelessness, and caused them to eat more cookies. So you can see how even a brief experience of being socially rejected can cause someone to go into a tailspin. So neuroscientists have found that when people are left out of a game by other players, the brain region involved in physical pain is activated. So with our brains, and especially the brains of our teenagers, so attuned to social rejection, social media and texting could be fertile ground for some really negative emotions. In a study involving college students, they had them interact one of two ways, either in person or online. And what they found was those who interacted in person felt emotionally closer to the other person, which totally makes sense given that 99.9% of our brain's evolution occurred during a time when the only way for us to interact with one another was in person. And, we can see this too, with some of the research with babies, when a baby is first born, they're much more reactive, or they respond much more to human faces. Again, because our brains are evolved to interact socially with people in person. That's the type of social interaction we crave. So along this vein, I'm going to talk about low value interactions versus high value socializing. So low value interactions can be considered like clicking like on social media, or putting a comment on someone's post. And high value socializing is having a conversation. So low value interactions and high value socializing are not equivalent. Think of these low value interactions almost as like tiny sips of social interaction. They can't truly quench our biological drive for social interaction. So what our brains really crave is conversation. To some, that's all that really matters. For our brains, that's what matters, is having conversation either over the phone or in person, right? So even texting is not sufficiently rich to truly fulfill this craving for social interaction that our brain requires. So if you think about texting, for instance, texting, like you can send information back and forth, but it's like in a less human way. And it's really in a way that is less valuable for what our brain needs in terms of social interaction. So, and consider like when you actually do have the opportunity to interact with someone in person, now with our smartphones and text coming in, that when we are actually interacting with someone in person and then we're getting a text message, we're being drawn away from that in-person social interaction, which is much better for our brains and our mental health, to this device. And so it ends up like degrading the social interactions that we have. So then we're left with this technology that we need for our social life, while at the same time it decreases the value we get from our social life. So the last thing I'm going to talk about in this section is isolation, right? So another reasons teens are likely feeling more lonely is that they're spending a lot of time alone. Data shows that teens are much less likely to hang out with friends in person, which leads to more feelings of loneliness. So while teens may be, spending a lot of time together online, that experience is not the same as spending time in person. And really that experience of spending a lot of time online really can't replace the experience of spending time with someone in person. So from an evolutionary perspective, our brains are designed to be with other people in person. We look for this and we crave this. And when that is decreasing, or we're missing out on those opportunities to be with people in person, we feel lonely. So just a quick recap, I reviewed 5 reasons for increased loneliness. 1 was the timing of this increase in loneliness and the introduction of the smartphone. 2 being boys compared to girls in terms of loneliness. 3, our evolution. 4, online versus in-person interactions. And 5 being isolation. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the what to do about it section. This section covers major concepts for reducing loneliness. It's not intended to be prescriptive, but it is intended to give you some guidance in terms of your own personal strategies for helping your child reduce loneliness. So I'm going to review the following 5 ways to reduce loneliness. 1 is to explore the source. 2 is high quality leisure activities. 3 is problem solving. 4 is limiting screen time and social media. And 5 is stop clicking likes, start consolidating texts, and consider phone-free socializing. So the first thing that you want to do if you notice that your child is lonely, or they're expressing to you that they're feeling lonely, is that you want to find out, like, where's this coming from, right? Like, what's spurring this? Are they feeling left out? Are they bored, because they're just kind of mindlessly scrolling through social media? You really want to look at exactly how are they spending their time. So you want to consider, are they involved in extracurricular activities? Do they have a friend or friends that they can invite over? Do they take part in high quality leisure activities? So you might be wondering, like, what is that? Like, what is high quality leisure activities? So high quality leisure activities are those types of activities that, your child can become engrossed in, like where they become so focused and like so into whatever this activity is that they kind of lose track of time. And, it's something that they feel passionate about, something that they really enjoy, something that could be fulfilling and meaningful for them. So Aristotle identified high quality leisure activity as crucial for human happiness. So you want to, if you notice that your child is lonely, or they're expressing that they're lonely, you want to consider renovating like how they spend their free time. So you want to, think about, talk to them and think about like what they really enjoy. Like, what is the type of activity that you could help them engage in that would help them get some fulfillment, or they would feel like really passionate about like engaging in this activity to the point where they kind of lose track of time. So you want to, though, consider like helping them cultivate this high quality leisure activity before you even move towards decreasing smartphone use or social media, because the more that you can fill their time with this high quality leisure activity, the more that you can fill their time with this like focused intention engagement in this activity, the more that their digital habits will seem frivolous. Like the more the digital habits will just kind of like fall to the wayside because they'll be so consumed with this other activity. So, the third thing that we want to consider is problem solving, right? So first you want to consider like if your child is not involved in activities, we want to do some problem solving around that, right? Like if they're not involved in activities, we want to think about like how are they spending their time. You want to sit down and you want to brainstorm with your child, either high quality leisure activities that they can start to pursue, or just like other, after school activities or other things that they can engage in to spend their time in a different way. So, as you do this, you want to also, to consider what's feasible, what's feasible for you in terms of your time and your resources, and what can be, like a good fit for your child in terms of what you can provide for them. So like, for instance, like if, your child's like, well, I really want to start going to the gym every day after school. Well, like if you work full time and you're not home when your child gets home after school, like that's not going to be a feasible option. You might then do some problem solving around like, okay, well, we can't go right after school. Maybe you use the time after school to do homework or do some chores. And then when I get home from work, then we'll go to the gym. You know what I mean? Like you have to do some problem solving to figure out like how to make these things work. But again, within your time and your resources, you want to help them to establish a new routine. Again, like if your child seems lonely or they're telling you that they're lonely, and that their routine is they come home from school and they have a snack and then they kind of spend the rest of the afternoon on their smartphone, this is not a routine that is helping with this feeling of being lonely. So you want to help them establish a new routine, like, okay, come home, have your snack, but then from 3 to 5, you engage in this activity. And then, after that we have dinner or whatever it is, but you want to help them establish a new routine that will help decrease their loneliness. And the new routine, hopefully would include some other type of activity, considering the high quality leisure activity to fill some of that time. Again, with problem solving, if your child is involved in activities and still feeling lonely due to social rejection, then you really want to talk to them about making other friends, right? You want to help them understand the importance of a real social network. So, encouraging them to foster other friendships with different friend groups, so that if one friend group is not inviting them along, they have other people to contact and to hang out with, so that you can kind of protect them from that feeling of being socially rejected and that loneliness. Help them understand that by having more friendships, it creates the opportunity to be invited to other social events and to have other social interactions. The more different types of friends that they can have, the more it protects them from this feeling of being socially rejected, because they have, more ability to reach out to different friend groups and to hang out with other people. So, next I want to talk about, decreasing smartphone and social media usage. The more that we can decrease the time that our kids are on their smartphone and on social media, the lower the chances that they're going to see friends hanging out without them. The lower the chance that they're going to feel that social rejection if they see friends, all, at so-and-so's house and they weren't invited. And again, like the less time that your child is on social media, naturally the less time I'm sorry, the less time that they're on their smartphone, naturally the less time that they're on social media. So, with the average kid and adolescent right now on their phones 5 to 7 hours a day, you really want to set a goal for decreasing their smartphone time. Again, because if they're expressing to you that they feel lonely and they're spending this much time on their smartphone and social media, we know that that is contributing to this feeling of being lonely. So you want to set a goal with them in terms of decreasing their smartphone and their social media use. But again, consider, like if your child, let's say on average, they're on their phone 5 hours a day, if you set the goal for 2 hours a day, that leaves us with 3 hours where, it's not being filled anymore. So again, consider, high quality leisure activities that they can engage in with that time so that it doesn't feel so much like a punishment, or like it doesn't feel like just this empty space that they have to fill, right? Like you want to encourage activities that they can fill that time, okay? So don't click like. This is the next strategy for reducing loneliness, okay? And so this concept comes from Cal Newport, who is the author of Digital Minimalism. And what this strategy really is trying to do is to move our kids away from this low value interaction and move them towards more high value socializing. So the more that you can encourage them like to not click like it or not comment on someone's post, it opens up the opportunity for them to cultivate a high value socialization with that person. Like if they're not clicking like or they're not commenting on the post, then they could call their friend and say, hey, I saw this on social media, I thought that was really cool, and they could talk to them about it a little bit. Again, if the problem is loneliness, we want to encourage more high value socializing so that it can fulfill the biological need for social interaction that maybe our child's missing out on. So encourage them to like save their comments for a phone call. Again, moving away from that low value interaction to more high value socializing. Again, if your child is lonely, we want them to be calling friends. We want them to be inviting their friends over and talking about these things versus just like clicking like. It's almost like crossing something off your to-do list, like, done, where that's not, truly fulfilling our biological need for socializing. So another thing to consider is consolidate texting, right? So again, the reason for this is to move away from that low value interaction and move towards more high value socializing. So, if your child gets a text, like, okay, fine, like they can, say like, it's fine. Like, you can go back and forth for a few texts with your friend, but if it seems like you're kind of really getting into a conversation, just say, hey, can I call you? Or, if right now is not a good time, like, can we set up a time to talk later? Again, because, engaging in that text conversation is like a less human way of interacting, and it's not truly fulfilling like our biological need for socialization. So some ways to consolidate texting would be, like scheduling specific times for texting. So, like telling yourself or like setting up a schedule with your child, like, okay, like, well, you're allowed on your phone, for whatever, this amount of time a day, like instead of like immediately responding to whatever text you get, letting the text like stay and, scheduling some time to catch up on your text messaging. Again, like giving some time for some back and forth, but trying not to get into the habit of like having full conversations over text, because really, again, we want to move away from that low value interaction and encourage them to call their friend or have their friend over to talk about these things that they're texting about. One strategy for this is having your child put their phone on do not disturb mode. And, if you're not comfortable with that because you want to be able to get in touch with your child, like you can go into the settings and you can adjust it so that, certain people will be able to still get through the do not disturb mode. So like I've done this for my phone, like with, my kid's school, I set it up so that if the school's calling, like that'll be able to come through. And like you can do the same for your child. And then again, they would have set times where they would go in and kind of catch up on text messages that they missed or whatever it is. So again, just trying to get some control over how much they're engaging in this low value interaction and really moving them away from that to the more high value socializing. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is phone-free hangouts. And I get it. Like I understand that this is not going to be the most popular idea with teens. I brought up this idea with an adolescent that I know, and immediately, before I even explained why, immediately it was like, oh, I wouldn't go to that, right? Like, because our teens are so attached to their smartphones right now, the idea of not having their smartphone like is totally undesirable for them. But at the same time, like we know that their smartphones are getting in the way of their social interaction and really like devaluing their social interactions. So consider the idea of a phone-free hangout, right? Like encourage your child to invite a friend over, but talk to your child that like, listen, like I want you to have your friend over, but leave your phones to the side, or I'm going to have you guys put your phones in this basket, and I'm going to give you time just to like hang out, do whatever you want, spend time together, but I'll have your phones in this basket. And if you have a good rapport with your child's friend's parent, I encourage you to talk to that parent and say, so-and-so's been really, my child's really been struggling with some loneliness, and I've been doing some learning and some research about this, and I'm coming to find that their smartphones really get in the way of their social interactions and their biological need and like how they interact with each other. So, this is what I'm going to do, like, have your child come over, but I'm going to put their phones in this basket. I'm going to leave it over here. Like, if you really need to get in touch with your child, just, call me and I'll give them their phone so they can call you. And talk to them about, what you're learning and why you want to do this. Now, if your child's older and you don't know their friend's parents, talk to your child and their friend when they come over and just say like, hey, like, I want you guys to have a great time. I want you guys to hang out, but, just leave your phones over to the side. If they're old enough and you feel like you can trust them to have their phones in the room, just say like, leave your phones on the counter. You guys like hang out and do whatever you're going to do. And if you need to look something up or if you need your phone for some reason, that's fine. Like go look that thing up, but explain to them how, you don't want to see them struggle in any way as a result of them always being on their phones. And, when kids are always on their phones, they're really not getting the same value that they could get out of their social interactions if their phones weren't near them. So again, introduce this idea to your child, talk to them about the reason why it's important to have these social interactions without their phone constantly like interrupting them. And, talk to their friends about it. And, again, if they're old enough, just explain to them, like, what you're learning about and tell them, if you have to look something up, that cool, fine, look something up. Or if you want to send like something to someone quickly, that's fine. But when you guys are together in person, take advantage of that opportunity to have the type of social interaction that, our brains really crave. So just a quick recap, we reviewed these 5 ways of reducing loneliness, 1 being exploring the source, 2 being high quality leisure activities, 3 being problem solving, 4 being limiting screen time and social media, and 5 being, not clicking like, consolidating texting, and planning for some phone-free socializing. So that is the module on loneliness. I congratulate you on your commitment to learning about this information, learning about how smartphones and interactive screen time are impacting your child. I hope that you're enjoying this information and that you're learning a lot. Until next time, this is Dr. B signing off.